We're on, okay. Thank you for attending the Boutique Lifestyle panel discussion. I know you guys have been conferencing all day, but you're going to learn a lot from this great group of panelists who will give you perspective.
Don't ever sell us, Kim.
Perspective from the franchise viewpoint, the independent viewpoint, and even third-party management and operational support. So it's going to be great. I'd love for you guys to ask questions. It always makes us feel good that we're bringing up some good points, and I will try my best to point you out and answer or get you up there so you can ask it and we can answer it. So the boutique hotel is an experiential stay, right? And I know everybody's saying that saying is a bit old, experiential, but it really is. It's the unique accommodation that people visit for design and the culture, and it's just a fun thing outside of staying in a traditional hotel, and it's done really, really well. I have some slides. I was going to go ahead, I guess I'll go ahead and start those. So we author, my name is Kim Bardul, and I do feasibility studies for boutique hotels with the Highland Group. I also author the Boutique Hotel Report. So I have a few slides to start our discussion, and then we will hand it over to the panelists. And this is about the growth for the past 5 years, and I probably should explain that we segment out the hotels into independent, lifestyle, and soft brand collection. And independent is not with a national franchise. It's the sweet spot's about 80 rooms, although you have larger and smaller. Food and beverage component, very design-centric, and over the past 5 years has grown 6%, I believe. The lifestyle and soft brand are with national franchises, and the difference is the soft brand collection, as the name indicates, is softly branded. You don't necessarily see Marriott or Hilton up there. They have their own name and identity, and you're going to find those in the Autograph, Curio, Unbound kind of products. The lifestyle are also with a national franchise, and they're just a little more prescriptive. Both of them are design-centric. Both of them have food and beverage components. The soft brand collections have grown a lot in the past 5 years, and I think a lot of that is due to the conversion opportunity with those, as well as some flexibility in design and operation. It's very appealing to developers. This is just all of them combined, and the reason I put this slide in is to show you that occupancy has increased about 10 points since last year, and most of the boutique hotels have not collectively reached their 2019 occupancy, but really strong rates, and you'll see here 16% increase in rate has allowed them to reach RevPAR at 2019 levels. So the one, I just finished the report, and the luxury independent boutique got a $40 RevPAR premium on 2019. They led the charge this time. This is financial performance, and I'm going to go one, okay, and then I'll go back to that one. So this is 2022 data, and we just did annual revenues by class for each of these segments. And you'll see the green color, if you can see, and these will also be, you can probably get them after the conference, but the green ones are the soft brand, lifestyle, and independent boutiques. And by and large, most of them perform better than your traditional hotels in the annual revenue by class. And if I can figure out how to go back, this is some financial performance. We do host, we do financial data at the end of the report. We do a pro forma for rooftop hotels, a pro forma for high-end revenue, high revenue F&B. And then this time we did an independent soft brand and lifestyle collective, all classes, and that's 2021 data because of the way the host falls in from SCR. But you'll see very strong EBITDA, higher than U.S. upper upscale full service. All U.S. hotels are U.S. upscale full service, and food and beverage is a big component, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And so I would love for each of you guys to introduce yourself and your company and explain how you're involved in the boutique world. Larry?
Thank you, Kim. So I'm Larry Speltz. I'm with Indigo Road Hospitality Group. We're both an owner and a third-party operator of independent boutique hotels. We are working on two branded boutique hotels currently, a Kimpton in Charleston and a Joie de Vivre in Roswell. And I think I'm unique to the industry that I started over 30 years ago in the hotel business while in college at independent, unique hotels in historic Charleston, and came up into that and into Relais Chateau, and then with Rosewood, and then on to other boutique hotels. And I've spent my entire career in that space. I've not really had the experience of working in the more conventional hotel world, so I'm very immersed in that. And Indigo Road started as a restaurant company, and so we are very food and beverage focused with the properties that we are operating or developing.
Okay, what are some of your most current properties with Indigo Road?
So, well, we just entered the hotel space at the end of 2019. I was brought on to be the hotel guy for what was formerly a restaurant company. And we currently have 4 open operating hotels near here. We've got Skyline Lodge up in Highlands, North Carolina. And we've also have one in the Smoky Mountains, not too far from here. We have 4 that we're opening this year. Asheville, North Carolina, the historic Flatiron Building, and Clayton, Georgia, just up the road on the Beaufort Highway from Atlanta on the way to Highlands, and a luxury hotel in Athens, Georgia, and we have one in downtown Charleston at the corner of King and Society Street, a 25-room luxury property. And then we've got, in addition to those, I mentioned we have some that are in development currently, the Kimpton and the Joie de Vivre, and some others. We have 6 of those. So I think we'll be at about 12 hotels by 2025.
Well, you're growing fast.
Yeah, we are. Well, our strength in food and beverage really resonates with developers and owners, and it's a great position to be in.
Thanks, Larry.
Yeah.
Kyle?
Yeah, hi, Kyle Gagne, Vice President of Development for Marriott's full-service hotels in the eastern region of the U.S. Been doing that for about 7 years with Marriott, with Wyndham for 10 years prior to that, and IHG for 10 years prior to that. So a good kind of mix of, the kind of the top franchising, big public companies out there. So, it gives me perspective, each kind of role that I've had in the industry over the years, operations originally, gives me a unique perspective as I, go and meet with owners, in their markets where they've got a dream, right? And they've got a vision, and that's truly what lifestyle and boutique hotels are. It's usually, a dream that is conceived and starts to begin, and there's such a passion that comes with it. And then, I come swooping in and am asking all sorts of questions and just learning, right? Discovering, what this is all about. And many times it's a perfect match, right? When they've either done their research and reached out to us, or I've done my research and reached out to them. And then oftentimes it's not. And we'll get into it with some of the other questions, but what makes it a lifestyle location? For example, that's one of the first things, we determine is, what is it next to, and what's coming up around it. So emerging markets, we see a lot of these opportunities come up for some of our brands. But sometimes emerging markets means the things around it are not quite what we need them to be. So vision, I think all of us have to look at that and determine what the vision is for the property, for ownership, and if it aligns with what we each individually do.
Okay, thank you. Tiffany?
I love that dream.
Yeah.
Right, it does start with a dream. So first of all, this is the Lifestyle Boutique panel. So if you would like to go get a cocktail, you are more than welcome. If you'd like to bring me a cocktail, you're more than welcome, because we're going to be talking about food and beverage, or R&B, which we lovingly at Kimden call restaurant and bars. My name is Tiffany Cooper. I am the head of development for Kimpton Hotels and Restaurants, the preeminent boutique brand. When Bill Kimpton started the brand 4 decades ago, we really created the space in San Francisco in 1981, when Bill bought his first hotel in 1981, and really just paved the way for so many of the things we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about boutique and lifestyle, even before anyone even threw those, words around like experience and other, curate, all those words that we like to use, as well as a great restaurant experience, which I know we're gonna get to. I had the great pleasure of starting my career actually by default at a Kimpton hotel in San Francisco as a sales coordinator, making $9 an hour at one of Bill's hotels in January of 1995. I've also spent about 2 decades at the big brands at Starwood and Marriott. I've worked with W Hotels in the early days. So lots of really fantastic brands. Obviously Kimpton is near and dear to my heart. It's a very special brand. But I would say over the last 4 decades since, Bill was the disruptor in the space and started the brand, there's a lot of really great competition and competitors out there. And I think that's ultimately good for the consumers, right? I mean, hoteliers are not the best at innovating. We often imitate each other. So the better we can be at upping our game, I think everyone ultimately benefits. I think the proliferation of the soft brands is an innovation that came out of the last downturn. And I think with COVID, there's some other good innovations. It's not all bad. So I think I'm happy to be here to talk about boutique and lifestyle. I think that this is, as we've kind of progressed through our years in the industry, it's been really great to see the evolution away from kind of the core brands, which I've represented those for a number of years. But there is a soul and a dream that you're talking to owners about when you're talking about the boutique world, and that's exciting. And also I should mention that our parent company, IHG, acquired Kimpton about 8 years ago. It's been almost a decade. And we have another lifestyle brand called Vignette. It's our soft brand. And we've debuted in DC at the Yours Truly, and so that's now open. And so now IHG is really leaning into that luxury lifestyle space. We're gonna have 20% of our portfolio represented in that space, and that's really been a great opportunity for IHG to really kind of bolster out the upper half of the portfolio.
Interesting.
Tiffany, I checked into a Kimpton in San Francisco in 1995, and I think you were working the front desk.
Yes, I was 12 years
Was it the one
old.
with the Kathy Griffin room?
Yes, exactly.
Was it the one that had the Kathy Griffin room?
That was the Triton, and I was up the road. But yes,
Okay. I got put into
There's
that.
a lot of irreverence
Yeah.
to the brand, even.
There is.
still
That's
today.
great.
Yeah.
That would be
Sarah.
a good word for 21C as well. So
Yeah.
irreverent, happily so. So I'm Sarah Robbins. I'm the COO of 21C Museum Hotels, and have been with 21C since the first one, and have helped grow and develop the brand. We started out as the owner, the operator, and the brand, and then in 2018 split off a lot of the real estate, and then the brand and the management company was purchased by Accor Hotels, and now we have moved into Accor's new lifestyle collective, which is called Ennismore, and it's right now the fastest growing lifestyle hospitality company in the world. And 21C is delighted to be part of that. But when we started, our founder, Steve Wilson, and his wife, Laura Lee Brown, were collectors. So we have a museum, a contemporary museum in every single one of our public spaces and bleeds into the rooms as well. They're curated, they rotate, and we have a whole museum team. So that was something I didn't know anything about and now do and understand a little bit more about that. But Steve perfectly put, it's really easy to break the rules when you don't know what they are. And he likes to say that none of us knew anything about the hospitality business. I did. I went to hotel school at Cornell, and I'd like to say I knew a little something, but I also came up through food and beverage. That was my first love. And so food and beverage is really important to us at 21C, but we've got this terrific kind of three-legged stool, if you will, where there's the hotel component and then the museum and really terrific chef-driven food and beverage. And I like to say that each of them could operate independently and they're treated as if they could, but we're so happy they don't. And we're so happy that we have all three. But the museum component really lends itself and it bleeds into all sorts of places that you wouldn't necessarily expect. And it's really been a key point of differentiation, which is the business side of saying it, but it's also been a hell of a lot of fun. So
Yes.
it ties to a lot of your reverence. You can't take yourself super seriously when you're standing in front of certain pieces that we have in the property. It's like, you just have to embrace it and roll. So
That's true. That is true.
Best doorknob hanger, do not disturb
Oh, thank you
signs
very
Yes,
much.
ever.
yes, I have
That
one
would
of
be a
those.
little-
I've stolen two of them, two different
good,
ones.
please. Yeah,
If you've
they're
never
very
been
irreverent. Yeah.
to a 21C museum, you should give it a try.
Yeah.
I mean, if
Yeah.
you can't sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning, you can literally go downstairs and walk through a museum. You
And
know?
you'd be surprised, people actually do. We hope they can sleep because obviously that's the experience that we're hopefully selling as well. But I read somewhere yesterday while I was not sleeping last night, and it said that there were studies that showed people get the best night's sleep in hotels. And I shouldn't say this is hotel-y, but I am not that person. So I hope our guests have that experience. But we're about to open number 10 in St. Louis. That should open in June. So from 2006 to now, it's been a wild ride.
Very good, thank you. So we've talked about the growth and you know, the things that make it important statistically, and we've talked about the dream and the vision and that sort of thing. But what about the consumer? So this last session that I was in here watching, and they were talking about how the consumers evolved, and I have to agree with that. You know, how does the boutique product measure up to what the consumer wants? Who can take that for me?
Well, I'll take a stab at that. Yeah, we focus when we're planning and designing boutique hotels. We really look for opportunities for storytelling, and that starts through the branding and branding authentically, and finding something that is interesting about the place to create a sense of place. And Peter Yesowich with MMGY Global, he did a great market research report about 10 years ago, the boutique hotel customer, and that the top 3 factors for them in choosing a boutique hotel and which boutique hotel to stay in. The number 1 was authenticity.
Okay.
And then the second one was discovery, basically wanting to, show me something new. And in the age of the internet, that's a real challenge, right? And in order to create a sense of discovery and introduce a guest to something new, you have to have that first one of authenticity. And then the third one that they're looking for is improving their sense of well-being. And really that comes from that sense of discovery, because through that sense of discovery, a guest feels like that their life has been increased, that they've been increased through learning something new. And it could be something as simple as an item on the menu that you've never heard of, and being introduced by the server describes it and things like that, or it could be a great outdoor experience that has been organized by the hotel. So those are the 3 drivers that we think are the most important to focus on when thinking about branding and designing and activating the hotel.
And you know what's so interesting is many years ago, I started at Starwood a week before the Westin launched the Heavenly Bed, right? And no one had thought about the bed, which is really interesting. It took how many years for hoteliers to think about a bed? But today, if you look at our homes, I mean, our homes are very different than they were 20 years ago. It used to be we'd travel and everything was better at a hotel. The beds were better, it felt, it was better design. But today we have, everything at our fingertips that we're able to really enhance our homes to almost make it feel like we're in a hotel. So now when guests go to hotels, you have to do something that's a little bit more extraordinary than what they have at home, which has gotten much better than it was previously. So, I think when people are traveling, design in particular is just the price of poker. Everything has to be beautifully designed, but it has to be done in an authentic way. And the travelers become very sophisticated. We try not to do anything literal. So if you go to Dallas and you're seeing cow patches, that's not good, or mountain scenery in Colorado. So, giving the guest a little bit more credit and let them have that discovery through really interesting ways. We have a property in Nashville called the Ayrton. Now, that's not a name that just rolls off the tongue. But the name, the Ayrton, actually was the original family name of the Vanderbilt family, and the hotel happens to be near the Vanderbilt campus in Nashville. So there is a storytelling and a narrative that's there, and it's very, very layered, and a guest who comes and stays could discover that. If they dig deeper, it's there. Otherwise, they could just stay in a really lovely hotel and have a really nice glass of wine. So I think that sense of authenticity in the storytelling is really important. And then just having people show up with heart, just being a heart-forward organization where you're connecting with the guests, right? Like that sense of connection, I think everyone after COVID in a post-COVID world appreciates that so much more. And so authentically delivering service, not saying the guest's name 3 times or the 5 and 10 rule, but people showing up as they are and delivering that service from a place of authenticity.
So we're able to do that so beautifully using the museum element.
Right.
And we talk a lot about the learning as the new luxury and that sense of discovery. That does tend to be what people are after, and it doesn't have to be in a super cerebral way. We do have artists that come in and speak to and make those free and open to the public, and those are very popular, but there's just as many people interacting with the art with a cocktail in their hand and really just having a shared experience. A lot of times we'll hear people say this is the best place for a first date because there are so many things that you can just organically talk about and have a reaction to, and some of our art is challenging, and so in some ways I think for a first date you're going to learn a lot about how somebody reacts to that. But what I love is that it bleeds into the team, and that the teammate can really stand, I consider it sort of shoulder to shoulder with a guest and both experience whatever reaction somebody might have to a piece of work, and do it as a collective shared experience as opposed to this very literal teaching of art, like we're overly educating someone. It's really more about the shared experience, but I think that is what people gravitate towards, and once they've gone to one, they tend to want to go to another one. But it's a perfect platform for exactly what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I would add is it's something just that has happened over time, is distribution. So for a long time, it was pretty much the tried and true branded properties, and we all went traveling and did that. And that one kind of quirky, weird, outside of Kimpton maybe, because you were preeminent, you did kind of define that. Outside of the Kimpton or the quirky property, it was like, okay, here's all the other choices, so I'll do that. So as time went on and the brands came in with soft brands and other brands came up, you go to markets and there's now 3 or 4 options, and they're great options. So, I don't think that was there, 10, 15 years ago. So as it may be the same traveler, myself, when I was 30, I went here, 40, 50, now I'm looking for that experiential visit, oftentimes. Mm-hmm. And same with the neighborhood, right? So where did you go? They know I travel, right? They know I work for me. Where did you go? Okay, I went here, and here's the hotel. Which hotels are your favorites? So it is, and everybody's 50 in the neighborhood. So it grew up as distribution went out. And the other word that I would say is experiential. That's the only other kind of word that really describes like I'm coming for an experience when I'm going to a lifestyle hotel or boutique hotel. Oftentimes that is, through a museum or art, or through the staff, operationally, which is a huge, touch point for those of us who travel individually. On our own, a long day of meeting with people, and you come back to the hotel and somebody either remembers you or makes a connection, and you ask about something behind the desk, they know about it, they talk through it.
Or the bartender.
Or the bartender, of course.
Always have the best,
exactly.
best details in town.
I remember going to hotels 10 years ago. Oh, I'd love to go for a jog. Where am I going? Here's the map. Versus, oh, when are you going? Like at 6 o'clock, we have a guy jogging like with 3 other people. So it's just interesting how that kind of evolved. But the experience and coming back and talking through that experience with, those around you really defines, I think, that space.
Well, I
What a
think it
great way
makes
to
travel
build.
fun again. That
Yes.
there's a soulfulness to these properties that I don't think other brands have, and that it does make it fun. And there is this element of discovery, so that it I don't know, it expands your position where you might not, especially on a business trip, have a lot of time. It also is able to scratch that itch as well.
Yeah.
Well, and it's important for me, wearing the Marriott hat, it bleeds up, right? So some of our tried and true brands, we're learning from some of those, things that we're learning from the boutique segments, from the autographs, from the tributes. So we're learning, we're bringing this, so we're making our, branded hotels more fun in the lobby and more bring them down from the rooms and give them a space to work and have drinks and craft cocktails and get our teams as storytellers as well. So it's bleeding to some of the bigger hotels. So that's great to see.
Yeah,
too.
one cannot overemphasize the importance of experiences. You're absolutely correct. It's so important to the success of the experience-driven, and particularly the independent boutique hotels. We, as of this summer, we'll have, or as of the end of this year, actually, we'll have 4 hotels in the western North Carolina mountains, the Appalachian Mountains. So it'll be Asheville, Highlands, Robbinsville, and Clayton, Georgia, which is right at the North Carolina border. And so we've created a role in our organization, Director of Outdoor Experiences, just to program outdoor experiences for those 4 hotels. A young man who is passionate about the outdoors, worked at Snowbird Mountain Lodge, one of the 4
Oh, right on.
that's been open, and just was developing all of these great outdoor experiences, and said, Zach, would you be interested in taking this role for the whole company and doing all 4 hotels that are going to be in the mountains in 2023? And he enthusiastically embraced that, and it's incredible the content and experiences that he's designing that we're able to offer guests.
And that is definitely how you make it work, is you hire somebody that can implement that programming and that activation throughout all your properties.
Yeah, and we're fortunate that we had, 4 properties, either open or about to open, that we could, basically allocate Zach across 4 properties and make that financially viable. Because it'd be hard for one property alone unless it were a huge resort to support that role.
Right.
Yeah.
And that promote, and what all of you are talking about, I love this conversation because these kinds of things promote not only loyalty to come back, and experience something, but to tell people that when you leave, you go home, you won't believe this place where I stayed. Or a social media, opportunity to take a picture, and it gets out there and people realize that it's different and they want to try it too. So I wanted to ask, does anyone out here, if I could ask for a show of hands, that already owns or operates a boutique hotel? Anyone? Yes? Good.
And do you want my business card?
So we've got some,
wanna do another?
Yeah.
some
And how many
true
of you
ones.
aspire to own
Yeah.
a boutique hotel or develop a boutique hotel?
Yes,
There
you have a
go.
question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
You were saying how many of us aspire.
Oh, okay. And you
Yeah.
plan to have one? Very good. Very good. So how can you tell that all of these things that we're talking about makes a difference? I mean, obviously the numbers certainly help, but how do you make this happen? How can you were talking, Kyle, about how it's bleeding up, so it's harder and harder to differentiate, right? And because obviously the full service hotels are noticing, and kind of implementing the same thing. So how do you really pull this off and make this work?
Yeah, I mean, it's so it's activation. It's the story first, so you build from square one, as I mentioned in the opening, is the dream, right? So that dream is then paired with, okay, how do we come up with a name with that dream? There's got to be a logo oftentimes if it's an independent or soft branded, and come through that process and understand really, the pieces that are going to ultimately deliver that experience. So, so obviously the brands and soft brands, have dedicated agencies that help through that and craft and create through that process to do that. But if you're not doing that on soft branded, then you should kind of do it, on your own, and whether you bring somebody in to have help with it, or work with with whomever to come up and craft that story. And then the big thing is how do you deliver the story through experiences and touch points. So sometimes it's art, sometimes it's craft cocktails, sometimes it's in the mountains, it's leading outdoor activities. So doing those things and having those, because that's what the consumer and the guest is expecting as they pay a higher rate and choose that hotel for their stay. And then the really important, as I've kind of been doing this for a number of years now, and going to the same hotels, going to the same markets oftentimes, is the activation needs to not get stagnant. It needs
Carry
to stay
through,
alive.
yes.
Yeah.
So was the craft cocktail the same one? Well, that's not exciting. Like
Already had that.
It was right. It was 2 months ago. Give me something different. So it is. It's keeping it alive and changing it. And I'm sure that the art doesn't stay the same.
It doesn't. It does rotate for that exact reason. But I also think like another, besides the financials, right? Because that really, it can't just be you're selling a dream, but you also have a return you need to provide. But another telltale marker I think we look at is like, are locals coming in our door? And if they aren't, that would be a problem. And that it is, a lot of the amenities are really meant for, yes, definitely for the hotel guest, but the people that you're using that on a more regular basis would be locals. And even staying with us, I think, in the early days of the first 21C in Louisville, we found that there were so many people that were using us as they would just take the elevator to bed, and that was their, weekend away. With being 10 minutes from being able to drive home to their children if there was an emergency. And we took that as a really good sign that we were doing something right, as that the community was actually connecting and engaging with us, and then we therefore did the same. And so if we didn't have that element, I don't think, A, we'd have nearly as much fun, but B, I don't think we would be really supporting the mission of who and what we're trying to be. So our locals coming in the door, they should be in this segment.
So for Kimpton, I mean, we've been known for our great food and beverage almost since our inception. We try to derive at least 50% of our food and beverage revenue from locals, from the neighborhood. We want to be a locally loved restaurant. We're not just trying to create a hotel amenity. This is not an afterthought. It's something that there's a lot of heart and passion and creativity that goes into each individual concept. I think that has been part of our brand ethos for so long. But in terms of just how we approach branding, and I think a lot of companies kind of talk about this design-led process. Kimpton is a design-led brand, and that everything starts with design. So when you're talking about authenticity, I think there's an authenticity to the brand because it does start from design. And from there, after we have a really good idea as to what that design perspective is, then we have this really, I think, charming process by which we discover the soul of the property, which we call the muse. And we identify a muse for every single one of our properties. And so if you walk into any Kimpton, even if you go down to the Shane and you ask the general manager or anyone on staff, who's your muse, they should tell you exactly who their muse. And it could be a male, it could be a female, they could be old, they could be young.
Is that a fictitious
and it's a
person?
fictitious character. But it is a good way for us to have a guiding light to the property, because if anyone was in operations and have opened a hotel, you're very excited. There's a lot of energy, and there's all these anecdotes and stories that you tell. But then over time, people leave, and people just forget this kind of storytelling. And then a general manager shows up who likes the color purple, and guess what? You have purple throw pillows everywhere. So the Muse is a really, really good way to keep our brand tight and keep us on brand. So when the new GM shows up and wants to put purple everywhere, you go to the Muse and say, wait, what would the Muse want? Using this fictitious character, you can also understand, what do they do on a Thursday night? What are they doing on a Sunday morning? What do they like to drink? Where do they like to shop? We had a lot of fun with our Muse for the Gray Hotel in Chicago. He wore Shinola watches, so we had a pop-up with Shinola watches. And so you can bring these activations and program the property and really kind of, once again, keep that brand tight and deliver that storytelling, that authenticity, that soul, and just really keeping that why of the hotel super present with the entire team. We don't give everyone an SOP that's the size of War and Peace. We give them one page. Everyone needs to be really, really clear on what who they're showing up for. And I think that really is part of the reason why our brand over the last 4 decades has stayed so strong.
Yeah, I'd like to support something that you just said that I experienced for the first time, because we've just gone through the design process for the Kimpton in Charleston, and it was the first time I've done that with the Kimpton. And it's worth elaborating that you say that you derive authenticity through the design for the branding, and you do, and it works, but it only works because the designers that Kimpton approves are designers who come in and they give due diligence to the market where they're in, and they find the authentic story locally to tell through the design. Because I've seen boutique hotels where they designed it based on, gee, wouldn't this be neat? But it wasn't rooted in anything,
hollow.
and then they branded around it, and it resulted in hollow branding.
Yeah, or it has an inauthentic.
I always call that
quality
dropped
to
in
it.
from outer space.
Yeah,
Like,
dropped
it
in
really
from
Little
goes
off the
space,
mark.
right?
Yeah.
Right. So and I bring that up because it's an important nuance of difference for the aspiring boutique hotel developer to understand that you can do design-led branding, but only if your design team are doing the hard work of understanding where they are, their sense of place. What are the designs going to be grounded in that have relevance to that place? And you guys do that, and kudos to you. And it was fun. It was the first time, because I've always done branding and then given the branding to the design team and then design around the story of the hotel and its brand. And you can do it either way, but
Yeah.
it's really interesting to see how you guys do it.
And that keeps it consistent too, and
I
your
think the
staff's on
consistency,
board.
yeah.
So everybody is on the same page, and it
Because there's going to be, the reality, in addition to trying to maintain good margins, you're going to have turnover. And so how do you keep your team engaged, right? How they need to know exactly the story and the narrative.
Yeah.
And you go back to the Muse. So when you're going into a renovation, is it the same Muse? Do we need to rethink this? Has the market changed?
Yeah.
What's opened, right? So then you go and do further due diligence and you refresh that. Maybe it stays the same. Maybe the Muse gets older. But you're having just this kind of, it's a really great, beautiful way of pulling our storytelling through.
And a lot of people in branding refer to that Muse, that Kimpton calls it a Muse, which I think is really clever, is oftentimes referred to as the brand archetype.
Right.
There's the 12 human archetypes. And that's right, we've talked about that
Yes, we
before,
have.
Kim.
Thought of that.
And just always, and it's great to always come back to what is your property's archetype, like a Skyline Lodge, one of our properties up in Highlands, North Carolina, it's the explorer, right? So you want to go out and hike and explore, and then all the attributes of the explorer sort of drive everything else around the brand and the property.
So we were talking about the locals coming into a restaurant. restaurants are very important to these products, and we should touch on that for sure, about its importance and maybe some challenges with it. Kyle, you and I had talked about, well, you talked on the call about, you know, are you going to run it yourself? Your guests may think you do. I thought that was a really good point.
Yeah, you know, sometimes a third-party operator or, you know, a local chef-driven restaurant that's so successful, you know, they want to jump in and take that space, you know, within the hotel. And sometimes that's great, but you got to go, you know, obviously you got to go through the same kind of thing that you do when you're first concepting the branding. Is it the right fit? Is it going to be the perfect fit for what you need? We've seen kind of, you know, in what I look at, we've seen, you know, a good bit of both, right? A lot of times it's owned and operated by the same franchisee, and you know, obviously they'll bring in a creative restaurant team to you know, build on it and build on the story, but they do have to match, right? So the branding, the ID, the muse, it really does. It has to, you know, kind of coexist. You don't really want a different dichotomy of, well, here's what we're delivering here for the hotel, and then you step into the restaurant or bar and it's just, you know, way different. It can work. I mean, I'm actually thinking of
We
somewhere
actually have a different designer for our restaurants. Not always, sometimes we don't, but we try to have a different designer because sometimes we like that tension between kind of walking into something new that feels like you're at a neighborhood restaurant versus kind of contiguous with the rest of the hotel. So it just depends upon, you know, if you're trying to activate the entire space, that might be awkward, but if it depends upon how it's programmed.
Yeah, like the lobby, you know, the experiential part of the lobby, right? So you go into a lifestyle hotel that's, you know, kind of the cool new hip place in town, and usually you're walking into a bar or really an activated fun space. Visually and you know, there are just things that are attracting your attention and you want to experience, you want to be a part of. So that's, you know, that's what we like to pull in, you know, when we see that. And if we're, you know, reviewing plans even, you know, we're wanting to make sure, oh, why is it kind of behind this way? And I know we all look at that from a, you know, from a development standpoint. And I think all of us, when we go to travel, again, kind of learning for, you know, some of the tried and true, you know, branded, you know, hotels. We're doing the same thing. We're taking down walls. We're moving that out. We're getting rid of Champions, you know, hotel and making it, you know, something a little bit more, you know, independent and approachable. So,
For sure, if you want locals to come into your restaurant, it cannot feel or appear as if it's a hotel restaurant. And so we do the same, Tiffany, that you just mentioned, which is I'd say 8 out of 10 projects that we're working on, we have a separate design team for the restaurant space from the hotel space. So it feels like it's completely different from the hotel, and we, you know, insist on separate branded entrances for the restaurant, so the restaurant guest who's local doesn't have to walk through the hotel to get to the restaurant. And then we like for the hotel guests to feel that when they walk into the restaurant space that they have walked into a very clearly different space, and it's a different experience from the rest of the hotel. Complementary, but different, right?
Yeah.
And that's a real challenge, is to don't go too far overboard to where it's no longer complementary to the hotel.
and then rooftops, right? So that's that. You know,
Yes.
that is the.
We haven't even gotten to rooftops.
Right.
and we're
Are you
almost
as far as
done.
big
Developers, rooftops print money.
I wanted to ask, does anyone have any questions at this point? Yes, please.
My question is for Sarah. I love your third property.
Bless you.
Me too. That's, I think, my favorite 21C.
And it's nothing like grabbing a cocktail and then drinking it in baseball.
Yeah,
It's a strange, weird maze that I can't describe. It's a fabulous property.
thank you.
What's the story behind the penguins and what color are the penguins?
Okay, so the penguins, I love things that are happy accidents. We talk a lot about maybe a branding exercise, and we've done that for our food and beverage outlets in our properties. And there is a time and a place for like a real process that's very thoughtful. but I love it when it happens by accident. And the story of the penguins are our founders, Laura Lee. So the penguins, we have penguins from a group, an artist collective called Cracking Art. They're about 4 feet high, plastic penguins. There's no other way to describe it. And they're 3D sculptures, and they are art, but they're the only art and the properties you're allowed to touch, and touch people do. So they end up everywhere. But Laura Lee and Steve originally saw them at the Venice Biennale in 2005 and purchased 40 of them to be part of the opening exhibition for 21C Louisville. And they were just part of other permanent art that Laura Lee and Steve bought. But it was the public that came in and just started interacting and really playing, there's no other word for it, really playing with them and moving them around. And we like to joke that people would say, okay, well, can you bring a penguin to our table while we're dining? And again, they're so hard to get in a car, I can't even tell you, I think that they expand, but they're 4 feet high, and they have this very at your service posture to them. And people then said, can you put it in my friend's hotel room? Can you put it in my friend's hotel room shower? We've done it all. And they've been a lot of fun. The gentleman who played Anakin Skywalker actually tied a lightsaber to one. That was a favorite, and posted it, which is hilarious. Anyway, so they've become this beloved like mascot, if you will. Our museum team hates when I use that word because it is contemporary art. But they are like a mascot. And so there's a different color for every single property. And that was the one, that's like the theme that bleeds through. Otherwise, each exhibition really is unique. They rotate, but they change when they rotate. And there's a different color, and we decided that was a conscious decision. But so St. Louis, as soon as we announce a project, the first question we get is, what color is the penguin gonna be? And it is orange. And there's great backstory to that, but I know we're running out of time. But it will be orange. The team doesn't wear name tags. They wear these little pins that have a little penguin on them, and they are truly a beloved little creature as part of it.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to have a boutique
Yeah.
hotel, and you can tell by the smiles on them. I mean, they enjoy what they're doing, and I think it's a really good idea.
We had to get rid of the fish for anyone that used
Oh,
to
that's
get
right, you all had the
goldfish.
goldfish.
PETA came after us, so
Oh, no.
the fish were all given away to loving homes, and they're in really good
I
hands.
remember
Yes.
Any other questions before we close? And please talk to these guys when they come off the stage over here. I want to respect your time, and I know you've got things going on. Yes, ma'am.
So with the hotel process, I know you have to go through a feasibility study. So because boutique is so boutique, how do you phase, or how do you account for the uniqueness of a boutique product in the feasibility study?
Very interesting. Who would like to take
That's
that?
you.
Yeah, well, Kim can take that one. Yeah.
It is. You do a lot of comparative research, and that uniqueness, especially if it's proven with all of these guys, you find where they are in other markets and the premium that they've garnered because of their uniqueness, and the rooftop space and the F&B and the walkability. But it is an intangible. I mean, it is hard until it's proven, to prove. I know I've done feasibility studies in small towns where there, wasn't a hotel like that, and I found other small towns where one did come in, and it's comparable analysis, and measured that and applied it to my product that I was doing a study on. Does that answer your question?
Yes, 'cause I know that's an important part when you're running the original, kind of the estimates and the pro formas early on. And so everyone asks about the feasibility study. So with some of the traditional products, it's easier to look at the comp set, but boutique products are somewhat different. So I just
Yes.
wondered how you capture that.
Yes.
Yeah, in
is.
addition to sometimes using a competitive set that's not necessarily in market, but it's out of market. Another thing that, and I think Kim has done this as well, is if you look at markets where there is a boutique hotel and it's competing against non-boutique hotels, you can find out what what its revenue penetration rate is against those non-boutique hotels. And let's say it's 125%, which would not be unusual for a unique boutique hotel to penetrate against more, everyday flagged hotels, 125 to even 150% penetration rate. And then you could then, if you can find enough market examples of that in other markets, and those markets have some similarities to your market, then you could probably make an assumption within that range.
Well said. That's exactly
It would at least give you some supporting data.
Yes. Yes.
That's right.
That's the
Yes,
first 2 pages of
Joe?
your report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for the panel, first of all. Thank you, and Larry, this is a question for Larry.
Uh-oh.
So, since I know you have experience in scaling the boutique experience, and I think it'd be helpful for the audience to understand how one of the issues, particularly as we were just talking, is security, particularly for the female traveler. Mm-hmm. And so as you scale, how do you market and create that branding, if you will, so that they go to the Explorer, they go to the Indigo, whatever it is, and so that the female traveler who is your client, who may go to multiple locations, has that sense and understanding and assurance of safety, particularly, but other benefits as well.
Interesting question.
Yeah, Mitch, that is an interesting question, and I haven't.
Charlestown did it, right? Hotels.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't, fortunately, we haven't had any, issues and sort of have similar security measures in our standard operating procedures that other hotels have, right? To make sure that people feel safe and that, there's proper care taken at the desk for identifying people and information being secure and keys not being given and things like that. And of course, it is important for independent hotels to take care because, the brands are good about making sure you've got, the right locks on the door, secondary and tertiary locks, the right viewfinder on the door, things like that. And of course, we still, even with our independent hotels, we still put landline phones in the rooms, things like that. So there's a lot of care to be taken in that regard, Mitch.
Nice. Anyone else? Okay, well, I'm sure y'all are ready to go to the gala or the evening festivities. So thank you so much for attending the conference discussion. Please give them a hand.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you.